Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. And a big hi from Meshram Livewire. We are live at LinkedIn and on YouTube, Bostonica channel at 9 p.m. UA. This week, we connected on 20th of May 2020 to seek your recommendations and suggestions for today's Livewire by two of the world's leading HR thought leaders on top 5 global best practices for normalizing workplace post-COVID-19. Meshram, Middle East Society for Human Resource Management, which is part of Global Society for HCM. The emerging Global HR Society has been organizing HR conferences, seminars, HR Majlis, HR mentoring programs, annual awards, and we have launched recently on New Normal our Meshram Livewire, wherein every week we will bring to you the global best practices, newer concepts, success stories, brainstorming sessions on industry-specific challenges, legal, labor, and compliances related issues of countries and regions. This initiative is part of our Global Society of HCM Vision One World, One Community. We take this opportunity to introduce our two HR thought leaders for today's Livewire. The first speaker is from Europe, Ms. Esther Comabella.
Okay. Hi, Sandeep.
Ms. Esther Comabella is People Director at Barcelona. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you,
Ms.
Sandeep.
Esther Comabella is a People Director at Barcelona, Spain. She is one of the leading HR professionals with over 2 decades of work experience and has led HR functions across Europe and EMEA region. She is spearheading post-COVID-19 normalization of workplace in Europe, and she is supporting hundreds of HR leaders across Europe to get back their HR functions and organization to past glory. Our next speaker is Mr. Shibu Warrier, Chief Human Resource Officer, and he is also an XLRI alumni. He currently leads HR functions for a specialized manufacturing hub in India and has worked for organizations like L&T and Mahindra. He brings over 2 decades of work experience in hardcore human capital management. He is currently leading his organization business and supporting hundreds of HR leaders in India and Asia to get their HR and business function back to its feet and to past glory post COVID-19. Welcome, Shibu, and welcome, Esther. So let's hear first from Esther a brief introduction, and then we will go to Shibu.
Okay, thanks, Sandeep, first of all, for the opportunity to be today here and to share some ideas and successes with all colleagues. Brief introduction of myself, because I think you have said basically all. I'm currently working as a head of HR in EMEA, in a multinational company in the technological engineering field. So as EMEA, in my experience currently, I'm covering 17 countries across EMEA, what it means several realities, cultures, languages. And obviously, I think that the way we have approached COVID and the learn that we have had regarding COVID and how to apply different measures from now to the future, it's been really enriching, and I think that it could be also enriching today for the rest of colleagues who are joining.
Welcome, Esther, again.
Thanks.
Shibu.
Always been a student, will continue to be a student. So it's a privilege to be part of this conversation, to possibly learn from people like Esther, you, and the audience who's listening to your conversation. I'm sure there are interesting things to learn from this conversation, and happy to contribute.
Welcome, Shibu, and welcome, Esther. Last 20th of May, we had a brief conversation with the HR community, and there are a couple of very interesting questions that have come up. And one of them was, what is the point of view from the retention point of view of normalizing the workplace post COVID-19, and what kind of a coping mechanism are we thinking, or are we proposing, or we recommending, and what are the pulse checks which we think it are needed at what point? And then the last interesting question was how to turn adversity into an opportunity. So you can address them as in when once we continue our discussion. So the today's hot topic, what we have been waiting for many weeks now, is the first is the normalizing of the workplace post COVID-19. The first global best practice that is coming to our mind, Shibu, is business revitalization and sustainability. We all know that the world has suffered a lot. 7.8 billion population, over 3.4 million people being infected, and almost 350,000 people have been dead, and there's a very huge and high mortality rate. And now the business and the countries, they want to push their economies back to normalcy, and wherein the HR and the business leaders need to take the driver's seat to a lot of things to bring back their businesses and the workplace back to normalcy. So the first question that coming is obviously and very pertinent is how to revitalize your business and to how to make sustainable. So your thoughts, Shibu.
Thanks, Sandeep. I think even before talking about business revitalization and sustainability, I think just before that, business survival comes in first, because you can revitalize only something that survives this particular test of time. And if I look at my personal experience in India in terms of how COVID has impacted business, especially with respect to my organization, what I see is that in the current situation, cash is king. And frankly speaking, that should be the motto from an HR perspective also, and not just a CFO's perspective. First thing, if you look at the way business has been going on for the past, let's say, couple of months, if I take that as a benchmark, there's been hardly any production, but my fixed costs still remain. I'm still paying my employees. I'm still paying my contract employees. I'm still paying at a minimum level something for the factories to keep the factories running. My power bills are not stopping now. So there are a lot of challenges in terms of expenses that are still continuing, but there's no money that is coming in, and hence my sense is that as far as revitalization, survival, sustainability, in the current scenario, I believe that the CHRO, the HR head, and the finance head, the CFO, need to work together very strongly. And unless they work together, I think a comprehensive way of doing business may not be possible. Now, let me take an example of all the past situations that we ourselves and the audience may have experienced. Whenever there has been a downturn in terms of economy, what are the things that we do in our organizations? The first few steps that we take is, okay, cut all training programs that are going on, cut all travel that is taking place in the organization, possibly cut employees, lay off employees. Now, which is where I'm coming from a place where I'm saying that, okay, first point, can we possibly do an 80-20 analysis on the kind of expenses that we incur on a day-to-day basis? The moment you do an 80-20 analysis, there are these top 4-5 things which are impacting 80% of your expenses. And if you tackle those issues in a much stronger, consolidated way, it has a much stronger impact in the way you manage your cash flows. I think that's the first point I wanted to make. And
that's a priority number one from you.
Absolutely. And in case if you look at the top list of the top 4-5 things that you need to do, most probably training and travel costs will definitely not figure in that list.
Yeah.
And if it's figuring, absolutely you need to take care of it. Irrespective of whether it figures in that list or not, I believe that we need to take care of those issues. We need to definitely work on those issues, and possibly classify some of these expenses as good expenses, bad expenses. Now, if, for example, the way I'm defining any travel cost, which is a good expense for me, is if my sales guy is traveling to a customer, speaking to a customer, and possibly getting revenues from my organization, it's still a good cost. If I'm automating some of the processes and it's going to result in increase in productivity, absolutely it's a good cost. But if there is a guy who's possibly just going to another country to attend a conference, and that necessarily need not bring business to my organization, I think that's something that can be put on hold in the current scenario. So broadly, that was the first point. Can I take a couple of more points and then explain them as well?
Yes, please go ahead.
Absolutely. So the first one, of course, I spoke about the cash flows, and the second point where I'm coming for is how do you look at possibly your cash conversion cycles? What I mean to say here is that you start with a certain amount of cash to do business. How do you use that cash, convert that cash into inventory? How do you sell that inventory, and then sell that inventory and collect the payables from your customer and get it back into the organization? Now, that's broadly classified as a cash conversion cycle. If you look at my area, which is manufacturing, the range of cash conversion cycles run from, let's say, 30 days to, let's say, 90 days. So the good organizations will get back its cash along with its profit in possibly 30 days. And the not so good organizations may be working at 90 days. So my advice to people who are listening in this conversation is that, can you understand your own organization's cash conversion cycle? The moment you do that, and if you believe that your organization is in that 90 or 90 plus number of days, then automatically it has a huge impact in the way you do business. On a relative level, I'm moving away from manufacturing. Let's look at Apple, for example. Now, Apple possibly has a negative cash conversion cycle, which means that it never has any issues in terms of managing its working capital. It is so powerful that it can delay the payables to its vendors in such a way that it keeps cash to itself. So that's a very positive place to be in. But if I'm looking at my sector, if I'm at 90 days, can I come back to 70, 60, 70? And then automatically that's a big improvement in the way I'm possibly doing business. And the third one, of course, the third point I wanted to speak about was a restructuring of the business. I mean, if you look at older organizations, 50, 60, 100, 200 years old organizations, they've all grown organically. And in the organic way of growing, they may have created systems and processes which have been relevant at points in time. The moment you go through a situation like this, it's a fantastic opportunity to take a relook, because normally you have senior management of the organization saying that this is the way I work. This is the way business gets done. In this current scenario, automatically that perspective changes. And then you have the ability to ask questions and say, okay, is this process valid in this current scenario? If it's not, in that case, can we change it? So broadly, if you look at some of these areas, it's a fantastic start in terms of revitalizing the business. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. What's your point? Your take on this, Esther? How about something on sustainability and business continuity?
Obviously, I completely agree with Shibu, making this analysis on where do you have your cost as a company, and what of those costs can be reduced, what of they are key costs and what of they are not key costs. We've done the same exercise in my current company, so we start stopping travels. Obviously, in my case as HR manager for EMEA, I need to travel a lot. I need to visit different teams in different countries. And I will link it to the next point. But fortunately, thanks to the remote working, thanks to the technology, to the connections, most of these travels can be reduced or substituted not all, and not everything can be substituted or replaced by remote working, but it's a way of saving cost of the company. Absolutely. Exhibitions. When you are visiting some customers, and probably with a call it's enough, and you don't need to stay there. You don't need to travel 100 kilometers to visit a customer for 10 minutes. So again, it's a matter of analyzing your business and reorganize your business, no, and really understand the workflow and how can you be more profitable, perhaps making things differently. So yeah, I think that it's really a good point. We have applied similar policies in our company. Yes. Also.
Sometimes, the HR people, we just take it to the heart. This is our HR budget and all. I think so that sensitivity part of the HR part must go and take a back seat, because things are relatively and extremely different now. And unless HR takes the seat along with the CFO, as rightly said, and become one of the closest friend of your CEO, it will be very difficult for you to take off your business in current situation. Then otherwise, what happens is, as we have seen, the business will be forced to push HR to do nasty things like, headcount, hammering the headcounts, and then HR on another spin, once the business starts taking off, you need people, and your reputation is damaged. A lot of things are happening. You can't take the opportunities and all if it comes. So I think so, Shibu, that's a very, very relevant point of 80-20 concept, and especially from the point of view of cash flow, because cash flow should be, I think so, our priority right now, and it should go as a priority number one for next, I think so, at least, I'll say at least minimum of 2 to 3 quarters, if not less. Next, best practice, which is most of the people they have been talking about, and we have been speaking to the many business heads and leaders all across the globe, and suddenly the world is different. It's totally different now. I have never seen people in Middle East, people saying, "Hey guys, go home and work." Earlier when you see person wants to go home and work, he has got some motive. He is not performing well. He has some kind of a relationship, and he wants to take advantage, and he's a slacker and all. But that thing has undergoing a sea change. There's a I think so. We'll say that the COVID has been, I hear somewhere that is a chief technology officer. It has pushed us to embrace technology in a lot of form. So Asta, would you be kind enough to go on and tell us more about remote working initiative? Especially, a lot of questions are coming up from people. Okay, we are working remotely, but my boss is always on my head 24/7. He's made my life miserable. I'm sitting and living almost next to my, system. It has caused a lot of stress to me. So these are the number of questions, and it's coming up from a lot of HR professionals and business heads. And these are, mind you, these are not the managers and the junior managers. These are senior guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, it is the big point, no? Remote working and what's happening around remote working. From my experience, remote working is something that it's been there for almost 10 years. But as you mentioned, and you explained it really well, suddenly with COVID, our life has changed, and we have suddenly remote working. We are all working remotely, and it will remain. It will stay here in our lives. This type of work, So, and I really believe it's a really powerful tool. It's a powerful way of work, remote working. But obviously, as a tool, it can be powerful, or it can be really damaging if you don't implement it or you don't use it in a proper manner. So when we have implemented the remote working, I would like to give some points that for us it's been important to take in consideration before implementing remote working on remote, because there are several points that obviously it is not that you have your laptop and you suddenly are working remotely. You need an infrastructure, you need a framework, you need some rules. So there are a lot of pieces and factors that will really help you to use remote working in the manner it should be used. And I just want to highlight 4 main bases in which then we can build this remote working. We can plan according to the type of company we are. It's not the same being a manufacturer that being a technological company or being a shop. So it's completely different, and the implementation of remote working obviously will be so different. But and especially in Europe, I think that first point obviously is technology. We all need, or companies need to invest in technology. It's not a huge investment, but you need to invest. You need to invest in having your employees with their proper laptop or connection, VPN. So these connections, they have to have this access to the information, to the system, to their colleagues. So they need to be connected, not isolated. It's not, remote working is not just being with your PC or your laptop working alone. You are in the system, so you need to be connected with the system. So technology, I think, is the first point. Then obviously there's something that in Europe all companies we are obliged to be compliant with, and I think that it is getting extended to the worldwide. That is this type of personal data protection. So this is something that we also need to be aware. How do we guarantee that we are taking care, or we are protecting the personal data of our employees, our customers? So it's really important how we treat and where we locate this information, this type of information. Third point, I think that we also need to take in consideration is the environment, the personal environment of the employee who is working from home. I mean, in the office, we all know we have a table, we have a comfortable chair, we have the light. Is this the same when they are working home? So they really have this comfortable environment or the proper environment to be productive. So this is the third point. Last point, just as a basis, is always important. It is also important to have some type of psychological support, because working from home, depending on what is the level of working from home that you have, if you are fully working from home, or you have some partial working from home. But if you are working from home most part of your time, you can feel really isolated. You can get into a depression. You can feel alone in the life. So it is also important to have some type of support, psychological support, or some support that the employee, in case they need it, they can call and they can have the support. So I think that these are 4 pillars or bases that before starting to, okay, let's go everyone to work on remote, we need to take in consideration. And then obviously we all know working on remote has really good things. It helps employees to balance personal and professional life, which is really important, especially nowadays. It is also a way of saving for the employee and also for the company. For the employee, because obviously they can avoid the going to work and coming, so they are saving time, they are saving money, and also the flexibility they have when they are working from home to work on this is something that should be also coordinated with the team. But if you are able to work on those framework or on those in which you are more productive, you are efficient, then it's completely double safe, because you are focused on what you are doing, and you are not thinking, I have to go on my. No, you are just focused on working. And this is the same for the company. I think in cost in savings, we not only save because we can avoid some useless travels, meetings, or whatever. it is also a saving, because if you have part of your employees probably working from home, then probably you don't need such a number of desks. You can probably move to a smaller office, which also represents reducing your cost. It can be also saving, because you have absolutely your employees, as I mentioned, as the moment they are concentrated, they don't need to think if they are, oh, the train is leaving or I have to go. They are just focused. So engagement is increasing, obviously. Commitment is increasing at that moment. So there are a lot of positive things with the working from home. But at the same time, if you don't implement it properly, and if you have an employee completely disconnected, they can get ill. You need people obviously working from home, but involved in the projects, involved in business, with the contact of the business, of what is happening really in the company, to smell, or what is happening, to be in contact with their colleagues. So this part should be also there. So I wouldn't recommend 100% remote working, but a good combination can be really, really interesting.
I have two more things here. How do you measure the effectiveness of the, while working remotely? That's a lot of, the question. I've seen, people have started working at, the moment they get up in the morning, and, they're working very, very late at night. So how do we, is it the quantity? Is it the quantity or a quality? Is it what? How do you measure? How do you measure this effectiveness? Not everybody can be on a flexible note. The organization obviously want all the colleagues of you, because you will be working on a one team, to come on a very specific time, so that you can brainstorm, you can work together, and you can be productive at the same time. Otherwise, what happens is, it'll be the same time, like America, Europe, Asia, working on a different time zones. So yes, if you are working on a different time zone, that's making sense. But if you're working on the same time zone, I think so that's one slot where you need to work is much desirable. Otherwise, what happens is you keep on stretching. One person gets up in the morning at 8 o'clock, another gets up at 10 o'clock, another gets up at around 2 o'clock, and it's on and on. The guy who gets up early morning, he is working for 18 hours, and the guy who's working up around, say, like a person like me at 12 o'clock, he's working only till 4 or 5 hours. So
sure.
How do you put this structure in place?
Obviously, this is a very good point. When I talk about flexible schedules, obviously I talk in a common framework. I don't mean that someone is working at night, the other, because we need to serve customers, we need to attend providers. So obviously we need to be in a common schedule where everybody is operative. This is the first point. So we can play a little bit in flexibility within this framework. And this is what we are currently applying. With this flexibility, I mean that it is not need to be at the office at 7:30 in the morning. Probably you can arrive, or you can start working at 8:30. It's fine, okay, it's fine also, but no need to be probably so soon in the office. And you are the main part of the working time. You are available. You are working. So playing a little bit with these frameworks, but obviously not completely freedom.
Shibu, what's your take on this?
If I look at my own organization, which is a manufacturing setup, a majority of my population is supposed to be working in plants. And in case of there is a lockdown, then there is only so much that you can do in terms of getting very measurable activities done. So HR, along with the manufacturing leadership teams, for example, the head of manufacturing and we created a very interesting way of going around this issue. And the intent was, of course, to ensure that there is engagement of employees to what they're doing, and also ensure that they are busy in terms of doing activities which they were not able to do when the factories were open and there was too much of work to be done. So broadly, if you look at a typical manufacturing project, whether it is small or big, you break it into a PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act. and most of the projects were not taking off because the planning aspect was not getting done because of lack of time. Now, when people are sitting at home,
you start from wherever you want. Yes,
absolutely. So you have the time to do all the planning that you need to do, and you won't believe it. Forget infrastructure in terms of laptops, etc. There were workers who did not have access to laptops or any of the devices which they could use to put across their points of view. What they would do is that they would take a sheet of paper, and let's say that this is my workstation, and in and around my workstation, the way I want to create a layout. Now that could be a project which increases productivity in the way the layout of the workstation is. Now, these people, some of my people who did not have access to even laptops, they put their ideas, drawings, etc. on a piece of paper, took a picture of that, put it on the WhatsApp group, and the conversation happened. And
that's nice.
To give you the end result, of course, there were around 400 projects that got created. And my manufacturing head very clearly told me, look, even if 15-20% of those 400 projects are really worth investing in, we actually have achieved more than our objectives. And frankly speaking, the rest of the projects will definitely give you something, but may not be necessarily earth-shaking. But at the same time, it has engaged the employee to think and try and do something for the organization, which itself is a fantastic employee engagement initiative.
There's a couple of questions coming up. I think so. I'll throw this question. One is Sindhu Sudhir, Chartered MCIPD. She says, with all the advantages with the people, still seem more stressed primarily due to the lack of boundary between personal and professional time and space, and recommendations to set these boundaries. And Ali Fenwick, PhD, Dr. Ali, he is Professor of Organization Behavior, Future Work author, and a keynote speaker. He says, you should be able to allow people to work at times that work best for them beyond a common framework or daytime schedules, as what Esther was saying. And so that's a very, I think so HR is on a tenterhook now. You need to balance between what is expected from the business and again what is expected from the time zones where the people are productive. Your take, Shibu.
I think boundaries need to be created firstly. So for example, in my organization, if there are calls that need to be done, they'll start possibly only after 10 o'clock in the morning, and try and close it by around, let's say, 5-6, so that the employee also gets enough time before and after in terms of getting his stuff done. And even between the time zones in which activities are happening, there may be slots which are available for him. We try and respect that as much as possible. Senior management definitely has not been able to adhere to some of these rules because sometimes you need to stretch beyond to ensure that things are systematically progressing in the rest of the organization.
That stretch is dangerous. That stretch, that's what is killing people.
Very true. So very true. So, there is this very humorous adage that is being used right now: death by webinar, for example. Now, people are saying that, look, we're tired of attending webinars. And frankly speaking, unless a webinar adds value to the individual, it's a waste of time. So,
right.
And all these conversations, as long as we're able to ensure that they're tightly gripped, I think they're going to create a challenge here. Sorry.
Esther, your take on the pertinent questions where everybody is asking mental health and well-being and remote working. How do you ensure? How you tell your CEO, hey guy, enough is enough. Now, you are making me work from 10 o'clock till 6 o'clock, and suddenly you pick up your phone and you remember, hey guys, I need to that report. And 11 o'clock, you say, let me have a con call with you till 11 o'clock to 1 or 2 o'clock. This is killing people, really.
Absolutely.
So how do you pass this message to our dear CEO or a board of directors or the business heads? Hey guys, you need to give some personal space, some space and some time to the people to breathe on a day.
It's absolutely needed, but this happened before the remote working, because we all have these smartphones, wonderful smartphones, that at any time your boss can call you, can write you an email, weekends, nights. So it's a matter of education from the top level to the bottom one, that we are working in a framework, in a working hours, but respect personal life. I think it's a matter of respect and education in all sides, in all levels. And what's more, there are some
My question is, how do you build a kit?
I mean, education, speaking with them, making them see that they can write an email. Obviously, they can work, but you know that you can postpone the sending of an email to the next day, for example, first hour working. So the way you make your CEO or your managing directors, that they need to respect, if they really want an effective professionals in their teams, they need to respect the personal life or personal hours. And there's a framework of hours, and I don't see big issues in, at least in Europe, regarding that point. Obviously, there are always someone who is asking you something at night or weekend, but it is
this is not in Europe. I've seen it. That's not in US. That's a typical problem in Asia and in Middle East.
Could be.
Where relationship and the work get so much intertwined that people are literally having difficulty in creating separate them a boundary, and it's usually gets so much mixed up, and relationship and the professional work. So even if he's asking, you cannot say no, and you continue taking, you continue taking the stress. And it comes to a point that, a point of break, they said, enough is enough, guy, and you can't say. And I think at this point of time, HR must become as a coach and an advisor to the CEO or a chairman, diplomatically. I think so. You cannot be blunt, because this poor guy is the CEO, and your CFO is one of the most stressed person at this point of time, apart from the HR heads.
Absolutely. Just to finish, I think that HR currently it's a business partner. I mean, we are on the side, obviously, right, managing, but we are on the side of the business, no? So we need to protect the business and to make our teams be obviously comfortable and happy while they are working. But we are all working for something. So as an HR, I think that this concept of HR is just making some pictures or whatever to it's happiness can be sometimes, but I want to think that nowadays HR are more business partners. They are on the side of let's do things in a proper way. Now let's drive the business in a correct way. Let's see how can we make our employees better in all senses, personal, professional. How can we develop business and teams? So this is our role, and to coach CEOs, to coach CFOs and boards on the proper way to conduct these teams, and obviously the business.
Good to see that HR is prioritizing money matters. Business is priority. All right, so let's jump into the next our third global best practice for normalizing the workplace is health and safety practice. I think so we can contribute here. What do you take, Shibu, on this?
I think COVID-19 is a problem that's not been seen by the world till now, and we need to take care of all the precautions that are advised by the government, the state governments, the medical community. So as long as we are able to ensure that the guidelines are followed, what at least the research is saying is that the moment you ensure that you take precautions, the chances of infection are reduced to that extent. So as far as our organization is concerned, we have just about started business in most of the plants. And the last time that we spoke, a few of my plants were still not open. And a couple of approvals have come in as of today. So we're going to start off business in some of the factories from the next couple of days. What we're following is very strict protocols. We are ensuring that we have done all the preparation work in terms of how work will start the moment approvals come in. So all the work that needed to be done in terms of ensuring that, okay, how are people going to line up at the gate? How are they going to get tested? Do we have all the equipment to test people? Do we have all the sanitization facilities? Have we fumigated the place? Have we ensured that we have sanitized the machinery? And what is it that we're doing in terms of each and every activity that an individual needs to do, right from entering the factory, using the washroom, going to eat his lunch, his or her lunch, come back, work, and get out of the place and reach safely to his or her location. Now, all aspects need to be taken into consideration, and we've been taking care of that. Touchwood, there has been no case that has come up till now in the organization, and we hope to keep it that way.
One thing, Shibu, very interesting thing is in India, I think so, is the COVID cases are emerging in a quite large numbers. Last 2 days have seen 5,000, 6,000 numbers. And I think now Maharashtra, the place which your factory is, it's leading in terms of the number of infections. So tell us more about how things are happening all across the country, how economies are opening up, and how organizations are there prioritizing, their work, and how HR people are prioritizing for opening up the work for the employees, and what kind of health and safety initiatives they are taking. The different health and initiatives, manufacturing, tourism, your airport, airline industry, hospitality, F&B. Just give us a flavor how things are happening.
So, the good part, Sandeep, is that the lockdowns in India have been very systematic, and there is a fourth lockdown 4.0 which is going on in the current situation. So the intent of the government and of course of the respective state governments always has been to ensure that least number of infections happen. They have ensured that interstate travels are restricted to that extent. If you look at air travel, for example, domestic travel has not yet opened up. I think just a couple of days back, there was a guideline that flights are going to be opened up possibly in the next couple of days. There is a very clear set of guidelines that has to be followed for an individual to utilize flight facilities, for example, so that the chance of infection on flights is minimal to that extent. If you look at manufacturing, the good part is that there has been enough education that is available for us. My factories are closed, but there were banks and essential services which were open, and we had the privilege of using their examples and the kind of trial and error mechanisms that they had utilized, found measures, adjustments, and those kind of measures were being shared across. And unfortunately, the fraternities, HR fraternities, whether you talk about CEOs, there are various forums which are operating. There is a lot of education that is happening on those fronts. So, frankly speaking, we are at the receiving end, possibly at the last stage of the infection, for example. And I think we have all the necessary information that we need to ensure that we're going to be able to open up and manage it well. At the same time, at an organization level, what we are also doing is ensuring that anybody who's above a particular age category is not expected to come to the workplace. The person has to work from home. If you look at people who have any sort of heart diseases, ailments, kidney ailments, etc., now they are also in the category of ensuring that they're not coming to the workplace. People who have children less than 5 years, we are ensuring that they are also not being asked to come to the office. So these are very clear set of guidelines which ensure that we minimize the risk at the workplace to the extent possible. And of course, if 15, 20, 25% attendance at the workplace, that automatically the rotation is much smoother, and it ensures that infection rates low.
Esther, give us your thoughts from the point of view of Europe, how things are happening, especially from the point of view of employee health and safety, and how organizations taking care of that no infections are spread and the proper kind of guidelines are followed.
Well, in Europe, we have had different realities and different stages in the way that COVID has been impacting, in different countries. So we obviously we have need to adapt to all these stages and the number of infections in each country. But obviously, we implemented health and safety measures. I mean, all subsidiaries, all countries that were allowed to work. Some of them, the country were under lockdown, so they were not working. So there was quite nothing to do. But we make sure that all our countries and employees had the proper PPEs, masks, gloves, everything that was required to protect their health. In case they had to go to the office, we created different shifts. They could combine. Obviously, not everybody can combine. Salespeople, they cannot be working fully on home, no, on remote. This is what we spoke before. Our engineering people cannot, who are on the customer side making installations or reparations, they cannot work from home. So we also plan this type of different phases and stages for those people who can really work in the office, keeping distance, making sure that there's a deep cleaning. We have this hydroalcoholic solutions. So we really make a great effort to protect our employees when they are going to the office, when they are visiting some customer. Obviously, it is really important. We also ask our customers to sign an agreement in which they are compliant with some preventive measures within their employees and therefore ours. And we also have this agreement with them that we are compliant with our prevention measures, not that our employees has not been infected or are not being infected. So it's like we both take care, customer and us, vice versa. So we have been really carefully in the way we have implemented all type of health and safety measures in all countries.
Just to give you a point of view from the point of view of UAE and in Saudi Arabia and these and Middle East perspective, the government has been very stringent, and they have followed a very strict guidelines with a lot of penalties. And there is a very strict guidelines that only 30% of people are only authorized and allowed to come at the workplace right now. And they have been releasing that on the phases. And I think so this is the reason, because the infections are pretty much under control in UAE and Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries. We go to the next topic, which is Shibu, your favorite management practices. What all things are there you recommend in countering this, normalizing the workplace post COVID-19? What kind of management practices you recommend?
So, Sandeep, personally, and I think there's been a question that has been raised by one of the people who was part of the brainstorming exercise as to how do you view this? Is this an opportunity for us to do something significant? And frankly speaking, from a business perspective, when you're talking about management practices, it essentially has to reflect the way of doing business. So if the understanding is that there is a new normal, and in this new normal you need to possibly work in a different way, then automatically business processes need to get defined in that particular manner. Now, I'm going back to the third point that I made when we were speaking about the first practice. Essentially, we were talking about restructuring of the business. Now, let me give you an example. When we talk about a best practice, if you look at a workforce in a typical manufacturing setup in the auto sector, there is a significant population of the labor force which is coming from actually it's coming in the form of contract labor. Now, the whole reason for having a contract labor is to ensure that the moment there are cycles in the business, you can essentially manage your manpower costs. So your permanent workforce is very different from the contractual workforce. Now, this contractual workforce is managed by third-party organizations which are able to utilize the extra supply in other organizations at any point in time. So that's how the synergy operates. Now, one of the practices that we have been able to institutionalize is that we've been able to ensure that as far as utilization of manpower is concerned, ever since the business has gone down, now I'm possibly operating with 70% less production. Now, if I used to possibly churn out 100 pieces, 100 bearings in a month, I'm possibly producing only 15 or 16 or 20. Now, automatically, you can't operate in the same way the way you used to operate to generate those 100 bearings. So automatically, all the things that are linked to this activity needs to change. Now, whether it is in terms of the control mechanisms that you put in place, sometimes in the current scenario, for example, there are major challenges in terms of finance, in terms of purchase, in terms of way HR manages its labor workforce. Everything has to be done differently. And frankly speaking, we are seeing it as an opportunity to make significant changes in the way we do business. And let me give you a couple of examples. For example, we have a survival planning team, which consists of a few people in the organization who are responsible for taking decisions to ensure that the 15, 20 bearings that I need to make compared to the 100 bearings I was making in a month, how do I ensure that the best quality emerges out of this? So earlier, when I used to make 100 bearings, possibly 90 were okay and 10 were not okay. I'm just giving you broad numbers. Now, how do I ensure that when I'm making 15, the same percentage does not reflect in terms of better quality coming out? This is also a place where we are utilizing our second line and possibly some of the top talent in the organization to take on leadership roles, because the chances of failure are limited to that extent because you have only a limited amount of work to get done. But this is a fantastic testing ground to test talent as well. Now, I think this is one of the things that we've been able to institutionalize pretty well. Another point that I wanted to speak about is using each and every employee to contribute to the way we do business. Frankly speaking, people in top management, people who have leadership roles, sometimes they start feeling that they have all the solutions. And in a COVID situation, frankly speaking, none of us know as to how exactly to operate in this current scenario. Now, if we are ready to let go and allow our people to do the stuff that they can do better, then automatically it improves the chance of the organization to survive as well. And this is something that HR along with manufacturing is working on significantly. And from a manufacturing perspective, because most of our people are with an engineering background, sometimes the HR engagement initiatives need to be relatable to the business. So for an engineer, if I say that, can you focus on small improvements? So Kaizen is one of the initiatives that works very well in manufacturing setups. And especially good organizations are at a much higher level in terms of number of Kaizens coming in by the organization, the participation ratio, etc. Now, what we are trying to do right now is utilize this opportunity and ensure that we pass on the responsibility to down the level as well, to my people who are operating the plant, the machine. Ensure that the accountability for my machine, my area, my plant, my organization. So the thought process changes in that direction. And then automatically the interesting and small improvements, when we talk about, when you look at these improvements at an individual level, they may not necessarily look very significant. But when you start putting a few of these improvement initiatives together, then you realize that there is a pattern that is coming across. And sometimes those patterns, those new initiatives, and a small portion of those new initiatives can result into much, much bigger dividends for the organization. And we are seeing a lot of value that is coming out, even in terms of, okay, so if I'm utilizing a particular machine, I'm utilizing possibly 10 people currently. Can I make a few tweaks and balances and ensure that that same work can be done by, let's say, 6 people? That there's a cost saving of 4 people, contractual workforce, which is not required. Simple automation techniques, which reduces the number of errors that happens. Putting a small camera to monitor how the product is looking like, and using a set of programs to ensure that measurements are machine driven and not necessarily human-driven, or rather, the errors that you can reduce, the human error can be reduced to a significant level. So Kaizens is another initiative that we are focusing on, and it seems to be paying us rich dividends. Hopefully, once the plants start operating, we will see. Actually, it's not just the savings or money that you get out of the Kaizens initiative. It is more a culture change that you're bringing in terms of
Yes.
involving employees in their own work, and that's a significant change that HR can contribute, and which has a direct result in terms of change of culture. And the second point is, of course, it brings money to the table as well.
Yes. Thanks, Shibu. Now, the last one, and which is one of the significant one, is for Esther, is culture and communication practices, which is very, very significant, especially during this COVID. Lot of apprehensions, lot of fear, different kind of a lot of informations are being floating around on the social media. People are creating their own conceptions. So what's your take, Esther, on what kind of a best practice the organizations and the business they can to build the right kind of a culture and communication practice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously, I think that communication is a really, really important point, especially following the best practice that Shibu has shared. No, all this change in management, all this empowerment of our leaders, this potential talent that we have, all changes that we are facing now for the next new reality. We need communication. We and companies, from my experience, we have been always lack of a good communication, internal or external. Even we are better when we communicate to our customers externally, our brand, than internally. So I think that this is a point that all companies, we need to think, and we need to really work on that, because all those changes needs and requires a good communication. And when I speak about communication, I don't only mean that communication made by the not top down, these are the rules and this is how we work from now. So communication has to be in all directions, bottom up, top down, peer to peer. So because communication, it's something that currently we need within the company. I mean, internal communication, especially if we have been talking about this remote working, this change in management, this new culture, this new way of approaching customers. So all this is linked by communication. So at the time we are good in telling what do we need, how we are going to do things, what does our employees need, and we define the next steps, or we define clearly how to communicate or what do we need. It's the way to make things happen, really. And communication, obviously, taking in consideration transparency. And I mean, we are building a new reality that it is based on results, it is based on efficiency, and it is based on confidence and trust, and to be reliable. And we need transparency if we really want to get this type of results. If not, just go back to the old type of work, and that's fine. No, but obviously, if we really want to invest in this new type of work, communication it's essential internally for sure, and externally also. And we have seen this change in how we are communicated with our customers, webinars, marketing online. So this type of exhibitions also online. So it's another type of communication. We are not calling them, we are not sending an email only, we are just changing and improving the way we communicate and how we communicate. And fortunately, there are a lot of tools nowadays that we can use to have this proper communication. Free ones, we can have Slack, we can have Teams, Zoom. So there are a lot of technical supports and tools that we can use. Especially, and I want to highlight that internal communication is really important. Who communicate to who? What is the content of the communication? What is the message? It is really clear, and obviously we need to shape the message according to the target. We are focusing the message. But if we want to create this spirit, this team spirit, this no identification with the brand and with the real business we are building now, we need to create this spirit, this team, and you create it with communication, with good communication. And so I can speak a lot about, we have as an example now what we have done to build this communication. We also have created teams, group teams by teams. We use teams in our company. So we have been in contact constantly with these teams, although we were not physically in the office, but you keep the contact, you keep on these processes ongoing. Some proactive that Shibu you mentioned, and this is something that we also made, not to create to, okay, give us our proposals, not give us your proposals. No, what can we do? What do you propose as a new projects that can help the business? No, and in this current situation, we can start thinking on that. No, so this is managed, or this is driven by communication, internal training, again, and external training with online online tools, no, webinars, or internal communication via Teams also, and
Right.
it helps you to create this environment.
Sure. I think so. Before that, I think so what we need one thing to be done for the communication and creating culture is the having a strategy in place. What kind of a strategy of communication you need to put. One communication for your employees, another communication strategy for your customers. It could be another communication strategy for your management, another communication strategy for your vendor, and all management employees all must consistently do not deviate from the kind of communication practice, both internal, what you're saying, and external. And I think so a periodic education to the employees and the management on the communication and its impact, both positive and negative, if it is not rightly communicated, should be going on, and that consistently has to be passed. What's your take, Shibu? Quickly, 1 minute, because we have reached almost to our time.
Sure,
Yes.
I think both you and Esther have covered this particular point very beautifully. The only point that I would like to add at this point is that this current scenario has brought out a lot of different warriors who actually contribute to our organizations. Normally, we leave them out as people who are not significant. Now, let me give you an example of the people who are taking care of security of my plants and my offices. These are people who have stayed in the office for weeks together, and they've not gone home. They did not have much to eat, did not have a place to change, take a bath. All the issues that they were facing, and they stayed and ensured that the safety of the office, the workplace, was taken care of. Now, these are warriors for me currently.
Yeah.
There are people from my plant HR teams who have traveled in very difficult situations when curfew was on to administration offices to ensure that approvals were received. Now, these are people who are extremely important for me. Normally, I would not pay, rather, the organization may not pay enough attention in terms of the kind of value that they bring to the table. This is a fantastic opportunity where we have realized that there are people, and each and every role is significant. And what we have tried to ensure is that some of the rewards and recognitions that happens in the organization starts focusing on people who are really delivering value in times of need. So I think that's one point I thought I will add in terms of the way we are managing culture and communication.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time. We have covered the 5 major best practices. Just to recapitulate: business revitalization and sustainable initiatives, remote working initiative, that was second one; health and safety practices, fourth one; management practices; and the fifth one, which was significant one, was the culture and communication process. With this, we come to the end of our small connect with the community on the 5 best practices on normalizing workplace post COVID-19. We thank both of you for your valuable contribution. And also, it's going to be Eid after 2 days. So we tell everyone all across the world, Eid Mubarak to all of you. which is coming up, and we brought this small little ED or EAT kit to you so that you can make your organization productive, bring the organization to the newer heights, make people comfortable, look after your people, engage them, and ensure that infection doesn't spread, take care of their health and safety, and most importantly, ensure that the quality of work life and well-being is looked after. They are not under stress. Thank you again, and look forward to see you next time. See you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sandeep.